Hello, my name is Connie Holland, and this is the Session 5 final reflection presentation for Values Aligned Leadership. As I look back over the course, the area and the concepts that stood out for me the most, and I actually applied them to situations that I've been in, is the ethics and strategic planning. In the beginning of chapter 6, there's a discussion on the questions that we should ask ourselves before we even go into the strategic planning or deciding on whether what route to go is if it's an ethical dilemma that we are facing. The first question is, why is this bothering me? We need to ask this questions because sometimes when we are faced with an ethical dilemma, it could be something that we're just taking personally. It might not be an ethical dilemma at all. So we need to ask the question of ourselves, why is this bothering me? Second, we need to ask, is it my responsibility? If this is something that we shouldn't be making a decision about, then we obviously should probably send it up our chain of command or give it to our supervisor. We don't want to be making a decision that's out of the realm of what we should be making a decision about. It's if it's not our responsibility, we can pass on that ethical dilemma to someone else, and we can give our opinion about the situation. But if it's not our decision to make or not our responsibility, it's not something that we should be concerned with. The next thing we should think about is, what is the ethical concern? When we go further into actually deciding what to do about the decision, that's gonna be part of the plan too. But there could be different options as far as is concerned. So we need to look at what the ethical concern is. Number 4 is, what do others think? This is very important, most especially if it's a big decision that needs to be made. You're more than likely going to have a team of people that's going to make the decision on what to do in this situation you're facing. And even if it's a smaller one, you can always get other people's opinion, and usually that can give you or solidify what you need to do in that situation. And then lastly, am I being true to myself? Are you going along with something that somebody else thinks you should do? First and foremost, you're going to, make a decision based off of the values and your worldview and how you think about things. And it should be, if you have a biblical worldview, the values that you have are the ones that are going to point you in the right direction on what you need to do when you're faced with an ethical dilemma. The next area we're going to talk about is the method or the process that we're going to go through to be able to make a decision on our ethical dilemma. And this is called the ethical cycle. It's a 5-step process, and this is going to be one of the many ways that we're able to understand the underlying dynamics of making a decision. There are lots of other ways out there, but this is the one that was given in our reading or in our understanding business ethics. So this is the one that I'll be utilizing, but you can always do the research and other processes that can be used in order to make a better ethical decision when faced with an ethical dilemma. The first step in the ethical cycle is the moral problem statement. And here it would be good just to write out your statement or even state it out loud so everyone's aware of it if it's a group decision that's going to need to be made. First, you're going to state what the problem is, and then you need to state who is going to be affected by the resolution to the problem. And this may change depending on the different types of action you're going to take, because different types of action may affect different people, or it might not affect as many people given the action that you are going to take. And the last one is in this area of the moral problem statement is you need to figure out actually what is the moral issue with it. The next step in the process or in the ethical cycle is your problem analysis. This is where you're going to look at what the issue is. And the first thing you're going to do in this area is you're going to decide what stakeholders are affected and exactly how they're going to affect them. And this is where prioritization of your stakeholders are going to be important, because if you have them prioritized, then you can actually list to each one of them, by each one of them, how it will affect them. And at this point, you may have to reprioritize your stakeholders because some of the stakeholders may be affected more than others, and those are the ones you're going to want to look at the most. Next is you're going to consider what your moral values that are going to be compromised in this situation. Those could be anything: honesty, trust, courage, compassion. There's a list of values, and you can pick out ones that are applied to this specific situation and look at the different angles that you may take in making your decision, and how those values will be compromised in those different situations. And then the last area for problem analysis is you're going to look at the relevant facts to the problem. You don't need any information that's not relevant to the situation. This is going to make it easier for you to make a decision. And this is one of the areas that is really important that stood out for me, because I think when making decisions before in my past, our ethical decisions, sometimes I didn't have all the information, and it's important to have this information in order to make the proper decision and not make decisions hastily. In this area, we're going to do options for actions. So this is going to be your fourth step in the process. I might have that wrong. I think it's actually the third step in the process of ethical cycle. But here you're just going to come up more than one option. There usually isn't going to be just one option. There may be one that seems more correct or more ethical than the other, but it's good to have more than one option, most especially if you have a group of people that are looking at an ethical situation. There might someone in the group may have more input about the option that may not seem appropriate at the time. But if someone else in the group has more information regarding that option, then that might end up be the solution to your problem in the end. So having more than one option on the table is very important, and not eliminating any option until you get to the end of your cycle, of the process of the cycle. Here we have a quote from Ravi Zacharias. It says, "The moral law serves as a profound reminder that in God there is no contradiction. The moral law stands as a consistent contradiction-free expression of God's character. If I violate this law, I bring contradiction into my own life, and my life begins to fall apart." If you read this, it would seem that it just applies to someone in a personal situation, but it can be applied to business or organizational issues as well. Uh, we need to follow our moral laws when we're making decisions. And this is very important, most especially if you're part of a group that's making a decision. It might be easy. It's so easy to sway in the direction of the others that are might not agree with you, because uh, they don't have the same values as you are. But as long as you stand firm on how you feel, and utilizing your biblical worldview, then at the end of the day, when you make the decision, or when the decision is made, even if it's not by you, you know that you stood up for what you felt was right based off of your values and about what you feel God would want you to do in that situation. So, more importantly, that's the most important thing, because it can be easy to be swayed by others, most especially when it's a group situation. It might be easier to make that decision when you're by yourself, or when you have to make the decision alone. Then sometimes you want to take into consideration, oh, well, what others would think of me, or how would they feel, or they might not like that decision. But the most important thing is to look at, what God would want you to do in that situation, because if you don't, things will tend to fall apart. And it doesn't matter whether that's in your personal life or in an organizational atmosphere. The reflection area seems like it would be something that would be pretty easy, but it's at the end where you take all the information you have. You shouldn't have eliminated anything from the playing field of what to do. Any of those steps in the process of the cycle, the ethical cycle. It's at this point when you decide, and make a decision on why you should eliminate things, or why you should pick the decision that you make. And this is usually, like I said, based off of your stakeholders and who's going to be affected the most. And you analyze all the information that you provided and you make your decision based off of that. But it's very important not to eliminate anything until you get to this point, because then you're able to look at everything and compare it. And once you've had all the information. So this is at the point where you will make that decision on what's best for your stakeholders. And like I said before, this is where your prioritizing is very important, because this is when you can see who's going to be affected the most and who you should be prioritizing most. So in conclusion, I chose the strategic ethical decisions and strategic planning and ethical decision making, because I thought about my past and how I have faced ethical dilemmas, and how I always thought should be something that I should be able to do quickly or make a decision quickly about those types of things, just because of how I was raised and the values that I had. But that's not always the case. So this right here, utilizing a process that will help me make the better decisions, I find it very useful, and is something that I will definitely be using as a leader. Once I get into that position, it will be a whole lot easier to make decisions once I utilize a system such as this ethical cycle of decision making. And then lastly, the strategic ethical decision making, it builds character, because once you've done this with certain situations, you'll do it again in the future. It also gives you an opportunity to get to know yourself better and know your values, and it makes you think about what you would do in the future, because most often people think they know what they're going to do in a situation until it actually happens to them. It's easy to say what you're going to do until you get put into a situation. So you think once you get into that situation, having some type of plan in place, such as the ethical cycle process, is really beneficial to you as a leader, or as a team, as a whole team, to utilize this type of system. So thank you for your time. Have a good evening.